Troubleshooting private VLANs. Private VLANs are delicious. They give you the ability to create VLANs within VLANs for more flexibility. For instance, we could take this little DMZ over here, give it the outer or parent VLAN of 50. It's a normal VLAN like we've all come to know and love. Then we can label within that VLAN private VLAN ports as isolated, community, or promiscuous. Isolated means that the ports cannot access each other even if they're in the same isolated VLAN. So we'll just say that we've got isolated VLAN 10. If these guys were all in isolated VLAN 10, 10, 10, 10, that means they cannot access each other at all, even though they're all in the same VLAN, because we've defined it as an isolated VLAN. The only thing that they can access is the promiscuous port, which, give you one guess in this picture, ping, where that is, the port to the router. So they can all get out to the internet can get in and access them, their DMZ devices, but if one of these guys gets compromised and becomes a festering wound in your network, it can only take itself down because it's isolated from all the other devices and can't access them directly. They can't use that as a hop-off point to access it, right? The community private VLAN allows you to create kind of sub-communities within this. So I could say, okay, that outer VLAN 50, inside of it I'll have community VLAN 11 and community VLAN 12. So I could say these guys are part of 11, right? This guy might be part of 12. I don't have a friend to give him to, otherwise you might as well make it an isolated VLAN, right? Because communities cannot access each other, but they can access anything within the same community or, again, the promiscuous port, allowing you that. I mean, the beauty of private VLANs, the reason I say they're delicious, for some reason I just think of a 7-layer bean dip when I think of private VLANs. You got that like refried beans on the surface, that's like VLAN 50, and then you dip the chip in, it's like, oh, there's sour cream in here and salsa and cheese. Oh, it's like that's kind of what you see here. So the promiscuous port can be accessed by, what was I saying? Oh, you can, with a private VLAN, take one subnet, we'll say 10.1.5.0/24, right? And then carve that thing up without carving up the subnet. So I can say, yeah, this guy's device, 11, this guy's device 12, this guy's device 13. They're just IP addresses inside of that same subnet. That's what private VLANs allow you to do without having to do more subnets and get complex and wasted addresses and all that. So it's a VLAN within a VLAN, but these guys do not carve up the subnet. That's the beauty of private VLANs. Well, what could go wrong with private VLANs? First thing is just an understanding of it. Just the concept of VLANs can get complex, so when you start introducing VLANs inside of VLANs, most people's brain just kind of, it's like done right there. So just wrapping your mind around that concept is a big one. Second thing is understanding that there is a lightweight counterpart to private VLANs out there called protected ports. So if your switch doesn't support private VLANs, it probably supports protected ports. The concept goes something like this. Let's say all these interfaces are in VLAN 10, right? I can go under any one of these interfaces and type in the command switch port protected, right? And the rule is, it's kind of like a lightweight isolated VLAN. The rule is protected ports cannot communicate with other protected ports, but they can communicate with non-protected ports. So I might just come in and say, okay, I want this guy right here to be protected, this guy right here to be protected. The rest of these I'll just leave at default, right? That means that these servers cannot communicate directly because they are isolated from each other. They can communicate with these other servers, or maybe there's a router out here to the internet or something else like that going on. That's no problem. So protected to non-protected is fine. Protected to protected doesn't work. So most of the time, if you're troubleshooting those protected ports, you've just typed that command under the wrong thing or not really understood how it works. Okay. So private VLANs, well, let me give you a flyby of what the configuration looks like, right? I've got a switch right here. Let's go into global config mode, and I'll create, let's do VLAN 30, right? This will be my isolated VLAN. So I say private VLAN isolated. Exit out, we'll do VLAN 31. That'll be my community VLAN. Hey, it works with a hashtag. Or not a hashtag, whatever. Thing. Maybe that's going to blow something up. We'll find out. So we'll do private VLAN community. And that now labels it as a community. So anything that I assign to the private VLAN 31 can communicate within VLAN 31, but won't be able to communicate to other communities. Okay, so I've got my private VLANs created. Now what about the parent? Let's just do VLAN 20. And we'll say private VLAN primary, because that's going to be the main VLAN that everything else is a part of. And then I'll do private VLAN association, and we'll do 30 to 31, right? Those two VLANs up there. Okay, so the structure is now created. Now all I've got to do is put my hosts inside of there. So I could go to interface fast Ethernet 2/0/ let's say 10. Let's say 10. Well, let's do let's do this. Let's do interface range. Fast Ethernet 10 through 13. Let's say all of these guys are going to be isolated. If I want that, I can do switchport mode private VLAN host. So we know there are hosts within the private VLAN. Then switchport private VLAN host association. And now this is where you lose a lot of people. You still, even though you're assigning them just to the private VLAN, you still have to type in the primary followed by the private. So we're going to say, okay, these guys are part of the primary. What did I say that was? 20, right? So 20 followed by the private VLAN of 30. That's the isolated VLAN. So bam, just by doing that, Fast Ethernet 10, 11, 12, and 13 can no longer communicate with each other. They can only communicate with the promiscuous port. Okay? Good. So then, and so, do you see, I mean, without, this is all stuff from the Switch series, but without getting into it, can you see how this can really mess you up? You know, just forgetting that, oh, I've got to type, you know, doing one before the other, you know, putting the, I mean, again, put this in the framework of a T-shoot exam, right? They're going to flip these around, put the isolated before the primary, or the primary after that. Yeah, you totally see how they can do this, right? So what about the promiscuous port? That's where you go to the interface that connects to the router or whatever is going to be promiscuous. I'll just say 20, right? You type in switchport private VLAN mapping, and you actually have to map it all up again. You say, okay, this is going to be the primary of 20. I don't know why I keep forgetting that, 20. And this is also mapped to 30 through 31, right? So we know that this is the promiscuous port for the parent VLAN 20, and then it responds to the sub VLANs or private VLANs 30 through 31. And then we have to explicitly tell it switchport mode private VLAN promiscuous. So it knows that this is a promiscuous port able to respond for all of them. Bam. You've just configured private VLAN. So you can see inside of there how it's easy to twist those numbers around or put the wrong numbers somewhere and really misunder things. So that's what I'm saying. Misunderstanding the private VLAN configuration or the rules, forgetting that intra-communication only, meaning if I have a private VLAN of 50 and I've got, you know, community 20 and 21, 20 cannot talk to 21 or vice versa. That is denied. Same thing with isolated VLANs. I've seen a lot of people that actually think isolated ports need their own unique isolated VLAN. Meaning I create like VLAN 10, 11, 12, and I say each one of these is isolated, right? And then I assign my computers to, you know, each one of those. I guess it would work. I haven't actually tried it, but you don't have to. You only have to create one isolated VLAN. I say VLAN 10 is the isolated VLAN. And then I assign all of these guys to VLAN 10, and because I labeled that as isolated, bam, they're all cut off from communicating to each other. They can only communicate to the promiscuous port. Again, understanding the rules helps out a bunch, and that's really what ties together the configuration. So you can do, and I'll show you some of these show commands to verify. Show run interface. So I'll do show run interface fast 2020. You can verify your configuration that way. Show VLAN private VLAN will show you all the private VLANs that you've created, which ports are assigned to each one. You can see primary, secondary right there. You can also do a show interface, and we'll do, let's go FAT2020 again and do switch port. That will again show you that this thing is enabled for private VLANs. There's our private VLAN mapping 20, 30, 31. Again, verifying which ones it is enabled to support. You now understand the elements to troubleshoot with private VLANs. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.